How's it going, OFPs? And welcome to another episode of the Off-Field Players Podcast. I'm your host, Philip Hall, and I hope everybody's having an awesome and just relaxing week, good start of the week. For all the St. John students that are tuning in, and for those that are, following the podcast here, just coming off a spring break. So, had some time to rest up, some time to just, reflect and, trying to, take a break from academics and everything else that's going on as I continue to progress through my senior year. And I don't know, for those that are watching on YouTube, you can tell by the fit, I'm all suited up and everything. I actually just earlier today had my graduation pictures taken. So, I wanted to make sure I looked good and, I thought I'd just keep the fit on, make sure I look good for the show. And, I'm doing pretty good though. I guess just to give a quick update, since I know it's been a while, aside from spring break, basketball season is kind of slowly wrapping up here at St. John's. They actually played their last game of the season on the road against Marquette on Saturday. Lost by a close score. They lost by 2, 96-94. But there is still some hope for St. John's to possibly make a March Madness appearance, as they actually have the Big East Conference Tournament coming up this week. Starting on Wednesday, they're going to play against Butler in the first round. So hopefully, they could get a win, and hopefully they move on to the second round where they'll play Marquette, who actually won the regular season Big East Conference title. It's definitely going to be a tough road ahead, but I do have some faith in my guys. And if they do make it to Thursday, there's probably a slight chance that I could call my last game as a student here at St. John's for basketball. And I know we're kind of slowly getting into baseball season, and college is just starting up. And even in the pro level, too, I know I'm spring training for the majors is about like a couple of weeks in. And actually, by the time this video gets uploaded, it'll be the start of the World Baseball Classic. That's right. The World Baseball Classic is coming back after how long was it? I think the last time the World Baseball Classic happened was 2017. Everything and with COVID happening, and 2023 being the year that they were trying to bring back the tournament. So I know that's going to start up this week. I'm actually looking forward to that. Chill watching baseball again, and especially watching international competition. The World Baseball Classic is something that I always looked forward to, especially as a baseball fan. For the years when it comes around. And those that are familiar, the World Baseball Classic is like the World Cup for baseball. So, I do highly recommend that you go and catch a few games. And I hear it's supposed to be pretty good this year. A lot of star players like Shohei Ohtani, Mike Trout, Bryce Harper are going to be in it. So, definitely be on the lookout for it, catch some games when you have the chance. But today we are going to be talking about some basketball. That's going to be the topic for today. And I actually wanted to talk about the landscape of amateur basketball at the moment. And if you've been keeping up with what's going on around, the basketball circuit, whether you follow high school, college, or, the NBA, or even if you're a fan of overseas basketball over in Europe, there's definitely a lot of evolution happening around the game. And knowing that this is a podcast focused for folks that want to work in the sports industry and work for a particular sport like basketball, like for today's topic, I think it would be great for you guys to, get some game on, for what I know and what I've seen firsthand, especially calling college basketball at the Division I level for a Power 6 conference school, and just seeing and just hearing about all the rankings and all the other stuff that happens when you're a hot commodity coming up in the basketball circuit, whether you're like a high school player, overseas player, or, even a college player at the moment, and just climbing up to the rankings and possibly trying to go after a chance to make it on an NBA roster. But there's a lot that's what we're going to touch on in the episode. It's actually going to be probably one of the most loaded episodes I do since starting the podcast. It's still pretty young. This is only episode 6, but we're going to keep it going. But I feel like the one thing that would be cool to kick it off with is just talking about how the culture of mainstream basketball is at the moment. So I think when I think about basketball and just the culture of it, I know there's this whole stigma of, it's just all about the flash, all about the highlights and everything like that. But one thing that I was doing when I was at home during winter break a couple of months ago is that I was actually immersing myself in, watching high school basketball. I think this, like around this time, this is probably the most amount of high school basketball I was watching. And I know with how things have changed with TV contracts being expanded out, I see that ESPN, they started this whole ESPN Next platform where they wanted to cover high school basketball games across the country and showcase well-known prospects or like top-ranked players that are coming up and possibly have a shot at going pro or even making it at a big school. And it was really fascinating to see how much involvement there is with highlight channels. Just to name a few off the top, like you have Overtime, we have Ballislife.com, Elite Mixtapes, and even one I have up here on the computer, like Simply Basketball. What Simply Basketball is more focused on the high school basketball scene in the Bay Area, and of course, for those that know, I'm from Oakland, and I actually came across a highlight of a game between Oakland Tech and Oakland High. And, Oakland Tech, there's a few big names that came out of there. And Oakland High, Damian Lillard, he's a product of Oakland High. So, yeah, shout out to him. And, but it was really cool just to kind of get back into that because I know, I've gone to games growing up and, seeing, guys come through Oakland and that have played high school. But just to kind of go back to my roots and just having a enthusiasm for the sport and just seeing like how, we're like our generation is trying to take it to another level with trying to promote, the players that are playing at these high schools when, in reality, a school like Oakland Tech, they don't really get a lot of national rep compared to a school like Sierra Canyon, like the school that LeBron James' son is playing at, Bronny, or even a school like San Ysidro, like where Mikey Williams plays basketball at. But I feel like what's great about this mainstream culture, especially with these highlight channels that you come across on YouTube, it definitely showcases just a wider range of talent there is across the nation, and just even the opportunities a person that wants to get into videography or just sports media is doing just to help promote themselves and creating a platform that allows them to showcase their talents as far as the filming highlight players and even featuring the next generation of basketball players that can possibly have a chance at becoming a big name someday. And I feel like when you look at the just the landscape of this sports media and with high school basketball coverage, I feel like it's great for the smaller schools because not only do I see a lot of these YouTube channels promoting high school basketball programs on the West Coast, but I'm seeing I came across a few channels that promote high school basketball prospects down south. There's a channel that covers basketball, like high school basketball prospects in Texas. One that's covering this kid that's coming. I think I forgot his name. Like I can't name it off the top of the head right now. But there's a kid right now that's playing ball at a school in Mobile, Alabama, and apparently he's the top leading scorer in all of high school across the nation. But when I Googled him and I looked him up to see where he was at ranking, he had some buzz. Like he's a junior right now, and he's a 4-star recruit according to 24/7 Sports, and he has a few offers from some big Power 6 schools. Most of them being in the SEC because he's from Alabama, and you have like schools like Alabama, Arkansas, Auburn looking at him, but I wouldn't have found out about like who this kid was unless I did the research, or at least I came across a video that someone put up to promote him, or even promote the school that he's playing at by putting together a highlight tape with live in-game footage of him scoring. There's videos of him like scoring 40 points a game, or right now I know most high school divisions or high school conferences across the country right now they're in playoffs. So like a lot of the playoff games are being covered, and you got packed gyms, and especially with the the top ranked guys still trying to fight to help their school get a championship before they head off to college or head off to the pros or wherever is their next chapter in life, whether it's in sports or outside of sports. It's still very cool to see just the exposure and just the amount of effort these people go through just to provide this. Because when I watch high school basketball and when I compare it to when I watch the NBA or even when I'm watching college, I can see that high school basketball is the pace of play is very fast. I mean, and I can see that there's a lot of effort and a lot of just excitement that happens across the culture. But the downside of this is that when I do come across these channels, there are some channels that have turned, covering a high school player's career into this major production. I actually recommend that, so you could get a feel of what I'm about to head into, is check out what Overtime did with Micah Williams. Micah Williams just wrapped up his high school basketball career, and there's this 2.5 hour YouTube movie or / documentary about his him going through his freshman year. And there's even been a few other clips of updates on what he's been doing, especially with him climbing through the rankings and leading up to him finishing out his high school career and going to be playing over at Memphis next season for Penny Hardaway. And I feel like there's some good in doing that, and there's some negatives in doing that, because I feel like when you're overexposing high school talent, because these kids are 14, 15, 16, 18 years old, and just already knowing the amount of pressure that they have on them and trying to perform well, trying to make sure they stay on top of school, make sure they stay out of trouble, because you come across these stories about how high school players, the reason why they weren't able to go as far as in their career because they were run with the wrong crowd, or maybe they just got too big-headed with trying to make sure that their talent still did the talking. But yeah, it almost feels like they're kind of getting the same. Well, I'm talking about the top dogs. Say you're the dude in the state that you play in, and you got Ballislife, Overtime coming to your school, help putting up a highlight tape just for you, and even for those platforms discovering one of your teammates on that squad, on the same squad that you're playing on, and yeah, they'll get a little bit of buzz here too. I'm sure, I'm not 100% sure how college coaches or how NBA scouts are, using the tapes that are being put up on YouTube. I'm not sure if they're using this as a scouting resource, but what I can say is that is a start, because when you look at other sports, and it's actually great, and it's not even just basketball that's doing something like this here. I see YouTube sports media channels doing this for high school baseball, and me being a baseball guy, it's cool for me to find or come across videos that are being made by content creators of showcasing the top players right now in high school baseball. And high school baseball, the route to the pros is a little bit different. It's either if you're a stud, you're going to get drafted out of high school and go to a major league squad, but you'll start on the minors, or you're just going to go to college, play there for maybe at least 3 years, and then get drafted. But just to see the production level and just having that emphasis of trying to follow somebody's story throughout their career, that's something that a lot of people in my generation, especially people in my generation that are sports fans, like to see. We like to see, somebody's coming of age story. We just don't want to be exposed to who they are as a finished product. We're exposed to, trying to relate to them. We want to see what they do off the court. We want to see what they're doing in the community. How are they able to perfect this particular move? If they're working on a crossover, or if they're trying to get their vertical up so they could become a better dunker, or what was their routine like when they're trying to become a better shooter? like we want to see that stuff, and platforms like this is helping solve that issue, or not. I shouldn't say solve the issue, but it's helping expand our get our wishes granted for what we want to see out of a product. Product being high school athletes. So I feel like with that being said, now it comes time to talk about how is this going to benefit the athletes, and we're still trying to stay on the topic of high school basketball. We hear all these stories about how somebody is coming up, they're a hot commodity, they have a chance to possibly make it to the NBA and have a successful career, but there's always like that debate. It goes back to the debates we have about who's better, Michael Jordan or LeBron. Who do you think, or why do we think that Stephen Curry can't play in other generations, but when we look at him today, we know that he tears it up. He's a great 3-point shooter. There's always debates when it comes to these conversations about trying to figure out the potential of these certain athletes. But when you know that you're hot and you know that you have a bright future, then now it's time to get serious, like trying to build your platform and let you, in the words of Jay-Z, like you're like not just be a businessman, but be the businessman. Like these kids are now finding ways to be their own business, be their own brand. And I feel like we have great examples of what that looks like in the pro level. You see what LeBron does off the court. You see what Dame does in the music industry outside of basketball. Like we're seeing what Steph does with the Curry brand, like with his endorsement deal with Under Armour. Like I feel like it's great that we have pro examples right now for these young cats coming up and trying to live like maybe not the same exact life that the current NBA players are living, but trying to use what they're doing to their advantage and just trying to become what we've been exposed to, at least for now. So that kind of transitions me over into talking about going into the second part of this particular segment and trying to talk about like the money aspect of it. And and knowing that at the end of the day, sports is in some ways a business. It always is going to come back to money. So when we think about the money for the amateur side of basketball, especially now with the acceptance of NILs, name, image, and likeness, this is starting to become a lot more. There's a lot more monetary opportunities now that high school basketball players and now college players are being exposed to. And it's not just the athletes in high school like starting this on their own. Like they're now starting to get managers. They're now starting to team up with marketing teams to help design their logo for what their brand wants to look like. They're starting to start LLCs, or if you're a college player, you're getting help from your athletics department. I know for St. John's right now, with how they assist our student athletes with the NIL deals, like we partner up with Boardroom, which is a marketing firm that's that was started by Kevin Durant and a few of his business associates. So Boardroom helps St. John's student athletes with their NIL exposure and trying to make sure that they get good deals with companies that want to partner up with, or I guess trying to build a NIL portfolio to where they can use their name, image, and likeness to help them put some money in their pocket, and also just to help the school a little bit, trying to promote one of their athletes, but not using it through the platform of the school, but using it through the platform of the exposure that the athletes already have. And I was when I was doing my research and writing my notes for this episode, I came across again of this evaluation chart of the highest NIL evaluation value for particular athletes. And there are two well-known high school basketball players, or I should say soon to be either college or pro players, that were on that list. And at the top, like right over Arch Manning, who is like a close sibling of Peyton Manning. He's lined up to play quarterback at Texas. I believe he's already committed to Texas. But at the top of him is LeBron James' son, Bronny James. And yeah, you can go do your research on how Bronny James is. I'm not gonna I go a little bit into that, talking about his talent. Like I'll let the highlight reels on Ballislife and overtime tell you the story about Bronny James as a player. But as far as looking at it from a business perspective, when you look at Bronny James, his NIL valuation is at $7.5 million. So say Bronny does decide to go play college ball somewhere, and the school is helping him partner up with NIL contracts. I mean, just his valuation alone is probably going to be just as much, or even less than what even more than what his rookie salary will be if he ends up making it to the NBA. Again, it's a big if. But don't quote me on that. But just seeing how the already amount of valuation that Bronny James has, and while still in high school, and yeah, granted there is a little bit of I'm not gonna say bias, but he's got a platform to build off. He's the son of one of the greatest basketball players of our generation. Well, I got certain things about LeBron, but I'm not gonna go into that. But Bronny James is the son of one of the greatest basketball players of our current generation. That's debatable depending on who you're talking to, and. He has something to build off of that. The 7.5 evaluation is, it is what it is because of who's in the circle. And I'm sure LeBron has given Bronny the game on how it is about the business, because LeBron's lived it and experienced it from his own eyes. And just for him to breed a second generation player that a lot of people are going to be excited to see in the near future. This is going to give Bronny the window for why he's evaluated to get as much money in NIL sponsorships as the numbers say. And I'm not sure exactly on how they measure this stuff, but I'm sure it has something to do with how many followers you have on social media, like your ranking coming out of high school, your pro potential, and your marketability to a particular audience, depending on how the metrics look. Now, if we compare Bronny to somebody like Mikey Williams, who was actually third on the list, and this is all coming from Boardroom. So, Boardroom put up this NIL valuation list, and Mikey Williams had the third highest valuation of $3.6 million. And I followed Mikey for a while now. I first heard about him. Actually, it was funny. I actually met him. I remember it was during that summer when I went to North Carolina for my 2311 internship. And I remember the first week I was in Charlotte, I stayed over at a contact's house, that's close with my pastor back in Oakland. And he was telling me about Mikey, Mikey, he moved out here from San Diego, with his dad, and he's playing basketball at, I think the high school he was going to out there was Lake Norman Christian. He played there for a season before he went to this academy, or started playing for this academy high school team, which I'm going to touch on a little bit later on in this episode. But just hearing about Mikey and just knowing how much of a hot commodity he is, and then later on looking him up and seeing oh man, apparently he's the real deal. He's coming up through the rankings. He's getting some buzz here. And, just by his follower base, when you go on Instagram or, any of his social media platforms, you can see that he has a growing fan base, because a lot of people are starting to find out about him. And then bring in Overtime, when as I look more into who Michael Williams was, I found that Overtime has been featuring him as far as creating highlight reels and even doing that documentary series that I brought up earlier, and just following him throughout his journey as a high school basketball prodigy. And just kind of get back on how I met him. We actually went over to the house that he was living at in Charlotte because I think the AC was broken or something. And I just I was like, hey man, how you doing? Hey, how's it going? So that's kind of how I ran into Mikey Williams, and then later finding out like, oh yeah, he's he's coming up. He's got the chance to be the next sliced bread, as I like to say. And just seeing what he has and how he's going to be able to grow his career, and especially what he's already done. Like I saw that he's already signed a shoe deal with Puma. Now, he is going to Memphis for college, and Memphis, they're an Adidas school, so I'm not really sure how the Puma deal is. Something that's gonna possibly be like conferring or controversy with him or like getting $1 million from Puma, and especially with him going to Adidas school. But I don't know. Like I think he's gonna cross that bridge when he gets to it. Like we'll have to see how that's gonna go. But just to kind of keep moving forward with it. When I think about where Mikey Williams is, I see that his route is a little bit different than how Bronny is. And, when you put them together, there's some comparison, but I think Bronny has a little bit more leverage as far as, who his connection is, the connection being his father, LeBron James. It's something to kind of just, have some knowledge about. I feel like, if for any OFPs that's aspiring to, say, become a sports agent, or like an advisor to high school players that have a chance of going pro, this is something that you should start thinking about, and even just trying to find ways to just get in the game. I know with the NIL market, since it's still very fresh, there are it's fresh enough to where they haven't, like, the NCAA hasn't really outlawed a ton of stuff. But they've done stuff to where there's not as much control in certain areas. So I guess, in other words, it's still like the Wild West right now, to where you can get in and try to build some connections. And that's really where you have to start. But we're going to touch a little bit on that later. I don't want to go too far into it because the next thing I want to touch on is just the route to the pros now. So when we think about basketball, we've always traditionally thought that the route to the pros for a top player is, you come up, you play in AAU or something, then you play high school ball, and you play AAU during the summers for a club team, and then that's how you're starting to get some exposure, trying to play, get some exposure from colleges, or even trying to just find ways to get recruited in the best way possible. And even, one of these ways, if somebody finds out that you're a stud, then you'll get featured on a highlight channel like Ballislife or Overtime, and they'll, put a mixtape up for you on just like your greatest highlights throughout either your season or your high school career. And they'll let that be the jump off point to be like, oh yeah, this guy, like this player is going to be a star. Make sure to watch out for him or her in the future. And and hopefully if that player does make it to the NBA or the WNBA, people can go back and watch their highlight tape from high school and be like, okay, so yeah, like this player was who this content creator said they were going to be, and look where they're at now. Like it's trying to just write the story. They're trying to write the story for who is going to be the next great player, which is fantastic. But just thinking about the route to the pros, a lot has changed in recent years. So it's not, cut and dry like you play in high school, you go to college, and then you get drafted to the pros. Now the game is starting to change a little bit. Like, I shouldn't say a little bit, but a lot of it. Now, what I discovered, and this was like a few months ago, I came across this CNBC video, and knowing me, like I like to keep up with CNBC just to like have a better understanding of what's happening in the world and what's happening in economics. And they do these features on talking about different career routes for like job salaries. And I highly recommend that you go to CNBC Make It and check out some of those videos. I think the videos are very, very fascinating, very, very informative, and just trying to navigate your career, especially for all the OFPs that are listening. Definitely make sure to go check it out. But they did this video on this basketball player in high school that's a part of what's the Overtime Elite League. And this is a league that was created by Overtime, the sports media platform that is just kind of newly found. Like, they're still a pretty young company, but they've already been making a lot of waves as far as just trying to help expose high school athletes that are, like the top players in the country. And just recently, they created this. It's like a pro-am league, to where they're going after the top ranked high school players in the country, and they're giving them the opportunity to kind of get a head start on their pro career. So the way that they do it, and what's very interesting about it, is that when you look at the Overtime Elite League, and I recommend that you go and do your own research as well, but they go after the top ranked high school players, and they give them an opportunity to sign what they consider as a pro contract. So say you're a top ranked player, you want to get a head start, or have a faster route to go play professionally, but knowing that you're still in high school, the competition level that you're playing at isn't going to be the same as if you're an overseas product. So like guys like Luka and Jokic, they since they grew up overseas in Europe, they had a much faster start on playing against pro competition, which helped them, become successful in the NBA at this moment. The high school players is different. It's like they want to try to keep the amateur status, but there's certain ways that you need to have, or get used to playing against pro level competition. So say you sign on, and from what I've researched is that they give you $100,000 salary for 2 years, because it's a 2-year program, or it could be 1 to 2 years depending on how long you see yourself playing against this league. And there's even a list of teams that they have. There's 6 teams that you can join throughout this league, and they all play. It's almost similar to how they were doing the NBA bubble during COVID, a few years ago, where they all brought them to Disneyland and they all played it out for the championship in the bubble. So they kind of work off in a bubble system, where because Overtime Elite, they're based in Atlanta, and they have real estate in their own arena, and they just have the games against with all the 6 teams in the league there. And I've looked at their schedule, and mostly everything is pretty legit. When it's legit that it's an organized league. Everybody that's playing there is a stud to some degree, and the length of the season is almost similar to say if they were to play a college schedule, which I think is great. It is definitely a game changing, especially with the opportunities that they're trying to give to a young player that is destined to make it pro, or at least have a career in basketball. But the other option, if you're not too heavily on trying to go pro immediately, because once you sign a professional contract to some degree, and once you start getting paid, you automatically lose your eligibility to go back and play in college. So yeah, if you decide to take the $100,000 that they're offering up front, you automatically lose your college eligibility, and it's up to you on how you're going to dictate your routes to the pros or to the NBA, which is the top goal for these kids coming up. But they do have an option to where you can sign on with the league, but still maintain your amateur status by not taking the money. And even if you don't take the money, they still provide opportunities to still be able to stay on top of school. So they have academic support for players that are still trying to go the college route in order to help them get to the pros. And they even do these courses to where you have a better understanding of how certain programs are, financial literacy, which I think is very important for athletes these days, especially with the integration of NILs and different marketing strategies that they're starting to do now. And even just trying to help increase your draft stock for when you do go to college. And I think even college coaches are going to see like, okay, well, he's played against kids that already have like a pro potential. So it's going to be a little more easier for him to adjust when he does get to college because, and it really depends on what school you're playing at. If you're playing at a school in the SEC, Big 12, the Big 10, or even like the Big East, like you're practically already playing against pro level competition. But say if you're going to like a smaller conference school, say like the West Coast conference that Gonzaga's in, maybe it might is like your draft stock might dwindle a little bit because the competition that you're playing against isn't entirely pro level. But with the Overtime Elite League, I think I like what I like about the format is that it still provides exposure to top ranked players. It gives high school players a head start on a pro career if that's what their main focus is, and still provides that plan B to where if you're not ready like to make a pro decision yet, we'll still help you get the resources that you need to still become a great college player, and then let you take care of the rest like when you get to that point in your career. And this is how it is now. This is how it is. Like they're starting to branch out a little bit because we've heard about the scandals that have happened like in high school, college, and I think what I hope for a lot of high school athletes is that they want to look for something that's legitimate. They're tired of trying to getting caught up in scandals because unfortunately in the past we've had coaches that have bribed kids to come to this particular school and give them these opportunities, and then NCAA comes knocking at their door and being like, hey, we need to talk, or you're in hot water right now, and practically like this, like a kid's chance of trying to have a career in basketball is over, just off a mistake that the powers that be made for them. And it's very concerning. But if like with Overtime Elite, they're trying to change that route. I mean, like they're trying, and the way is it's not so much they're trying to debunk the system. They're trying to find or give a player a better opportunity without the without the worries of being involved in something that they don't have to be in. And it's great. Like, and I feel like you definitely need to go do your own research on how Overtime Elite works, and definitely try to find a way to see how this can help benefit you if you're trying to work into basketball. Because I know they got some major sponsors. I know Amazon actually bought the broadcasting rights for Overtime Elite, and they've also had a partnership with GMC and a few other big companies that are involved. So it's definitely going to go in the right direction on that front. You think about the G League. So right now, the NBA G League has a team called G League Ignite, which is a pro team for like high school players that are trying to get a head start in their pro career. And this is like off the side from what Overtime Elite does, but I think the NBA G League Ignite team does a little bit more of preparation for high school players to get ready to become draft picks. Actually, just recently, there was one kid that got drafted last year to the Milwaukee Bucks that was a product of the NBA G League Ignite, Marlon Beauchamp. And even this year, just looking at the mock draft list, there's a player by the name of Scoot Henderson that's currently playing for an NBA G League Ignite team, and he's projected to go number 2 overall in this year's draft. And I actually even forgot to mention that for the Overtime Elite League, there's a kid that's actually from Oakland by the name of Eamon Thompson, who's projected to go number 4, the 4th overall in the draft this year, and he's a product of the Overtime Elite League. So I mean, like we're starting to see some success stories come out of the system, and I think it's great. I think it's great that we have these other platforms, and especially for a kid, if they really believe that basketball is going to be their life, or they want basketball to be their life, then there are opportunities that aren't just the norm or like the things that we've been used to. And I feel like if you're still like, a proponent of, a kid going to college, getting an education, and still just trying to mature and grow as a person, then college is still going to be there. Like I highly doubt that these leagues like Overtime Elite or the teams like the G League Ignite is going to, like decrease the participation levels in college basketball. Like, because in reality, like if we think about how many kids there are that are playing sports all across the country, I feel like college sports still has a place in it, because there are student athletes that want to have like a real life college experience. They want to go to school. They want to get a degree. They still want to play sports, and even just the atmosphere of playing in college, especially with just that camaraderie that you have with teamwork and just tradition. There are players that want that life. I mean, so college isn't going to go anywhere. Like there's still going to be college basketball. Don't worry. Like this isn't like a end all be all for like the state of college basketball. It's still going to be there. It's just we have different opportunities for like these kids, and not every kid in Overtime Elite or the G League Ignite is gonna make it, but to still have like college as a pathway, that's still good. We're still gonna be all right if you're a college basketball fan. But there's also been a rise of what's called prep academies created for elite players. So I noticed this when I found out about like Mikey Williams. Actually, Mikey, before he transferred back to San Ysidro High School in San Diego, where he originally started out, he played for a team that was called Vertical Academy, and they were like just a team filled with top high school basketball prospects that played against other high schools in the area. Like I think they were based out of North Carolina, from what I remember. They only lasted for a season, but there's also like been other prep academies were built just for basketball players that have started up. Like I think LaMelo Ball. Before he went to Australia, he played at a prep academy called Spire Academy in Ohio, and that was kind of like him working his way back to eventually become an NBA draft pick. But yeah, they're starting to see that rise now to where you get a top athlete and they decide to leave their high school and go play for prep academy, because that's going to allow them to get better exposure, play against better competition, and possibly increase their draft stock, whether they were to go get drafted out of high school or go play at a better college. And yeah, there's been studies, or there's been situations where that has happened, and I feel like for high school basketball, just for where it is, like you're playing for the pride of your school, I feel like in a way that does get taken away, but you also got to think about the opportunities that you're getting, because when I look at these highlights on YouTube, especially for the games that are being covered by ESPN, I noticed that the schools that they're featuring, they're not playing against the rival school down the street from them. They're playing against other nationally ranked high schoolers. Like during the season, there's a league that was created specifically for all the nationally ranked high school teams in the country. I think you have to be like a top 10 or a top 20 high school program to even be in the invitation to this league. Actually, there's two guys on St. John's basketball, Andre Corbello and Rafael Pinzon. They played at a school called Long Island Lutheran High School, just down the road here from St. John's. And they were a part of this particular league where they were playing against school like Montverde Academy, a few other schools, like Sunrise Christian out in Kansas. And yeah, those are like nationally ranked schools. Like those are the schools where like the top players go to. Even La Lumiere in Indiana. Like La Lumiere is the high school that Jordan Poole on the Warriors came out of, and that's starting to change. Like they're like the schools, the high school programs that are going to be that know they're going to be nationally ranked and know that they're going to get the best prospects in the country, they're not going to want to play the school down the street anymore. They're going to want to play against tougher schools. Like Christ the King High School, just down the road here in Queens. There's a guy that's supposed to be coming here next year by the name of Brandon Gardner. He's a top 100 player. He plays over there. And I think also Carmelo Anthony's son, Keon, plays over at Christ the King. They literally, like early in the season or earlier this year, they literally flew out from New York out to Cali to play against Bronny's school, Sierra Canyon. And that game was nationally televised. And at the time, Sierra Canyon and Christ the King, they were like two of the top ranked high school teams in the nation. So, yeah, and knowing how much power that a company like ESPN has on a media standpoint, and knowing that they're generating revenue for these schools, like the school is going to want to take that deal. They're going to want to take the deal to where, hey, if you put us on national TV, we'll help you get exposure for like prospective students or players that are coming up in the system, and we'll also help promote, your top player. So a kid that's going to be more entitled to want to transfer to a school like that so they could get those opportunities. That's just how the business goes. Like, I'm not saying that works for everybody, but for the players that are going after dreams and trying to play in the NBA, then that's the route that they're going to choose. They're going to choose to want to play at the top ranked school. Now, when I think about overseas opportunities or even postgraduate opportunities, because there are players in high school that will take an extra year of high school before they go to college or before they try to turn pro. AJ Storr, he's one of the new freshmen here at St. John's. He's on the team. He actually had a great season. He was he actually just recently made the Big East all freshman team. He before he came to St. John's, he was a top 100 ESPN top 100 player in the country, like highest recruit that Mike Anderson actually had during his tenure as a head coach here at St. John's. But before he came here, he took a postgraduate year at IMG Academy down in Florida. And I feel like that year did kind of help him out. I mean, to see how great of a season he had. And that's another route that a high school player will take. They'll be willing to, miss out on 1 year. It's almost like a redshirt year. Like when you're a college athlete and say like a coach decides to redshirt you your first year. Well, I feel like now the game is starting to change a little bit because these schools, like some of these schools, still allow a kid to play a postgraduate year, to where like after they graduate high school as a senior, they'll take a year. Like I guess it's like a mix between taking a redshirt year and taking a gap year before you go to college. And you'll take that extra year to develop, maybe try to increase your draft stock, and then decide to make that leap into college because you felt that you needed some more time. And for a player like AJ Storr here at St. John's, I felt like that worked out for him, especially for the season that he had. And by the way, go check out the broadcast clip I did when I called the game for St. John's and Georgetown when AJ Storr actually hit the game-winning 3 at the Garden. Yeah, definitely check out that clip on my personal channel when you get a chance to. And postgraduate years is now the new route for high-ranking players. And lastly, before I transition, we also talk about overseas opportunities to advance pro experience. And yes, there's been this large influx of top international players now coming into the NBA and just lighting the league up. You got Giannis from Greece, Nikola Jokic out of Serbia, Luka, Slovenia. Next year, the draft is coming up this summer, 2023. Like the first overall pick, Victor Wembanyama, coming out of France, and they're saying that he's the next sliced bread. So, international competition is now creeping up, and even when you think about this as an American player that's coming up in high school, you're now and you're still trying to shoot for a chance to play in the NBA. Now, not only do you have to compete against all the other high school players in the country, in the United States, but you're also competing against international players now. So the stakes are getting a lot higher. And now colleges, top-ranked colleges, are now going overseas and trying to pull talent from the international circuit because of these new doors now that are starting to open here in North America, like to get a head start on the pro route, with Overtime Elite and G League Ignite. So yeah, like the stakes are now getting a little bit higher, especially with international players now coming into the fold. And I feel like with international players, their mentality is a lot different than what most North American players have been accustomed to throughout their lives. Because international players like Victor Wembanyama had a head start on getting into pro ball. I think he turned pro when he was like 16. So he's already had, like a pretty early jump on, like his route to the pros. And I'm not saying this for like American players to start shaking in their boots or anything, but just understand how the sport is starting to adapt, especially with the sport becoming more global and popularized in different countries around the world. There's always going to be the next Giannis. There's always going to be the next Luka. There's always going to be the next Jokic. I mean, it's never going to stop. So they just have to be ready for that, and just understand like what was it going to take for you to get that opportunity to be in the NBA someday. Are you going to want to go to college? Are you going to want to play in these upstart pro-am leagues? Are you going to want to just go overseas early right after you finish high school? Get a bit of money over there, play against pro competition. Because if you do that, do understand that if you do decide to go overseas and play in Europe, you're still going to be playing against pro competition. That's what LaMelo did. He went overseas. He played down in Australia before he entered the draft, and look where it got him. There's just something to think about too. But just to go into how the last part of this episode, I want to talk about how this is like this whole topic of just the landscape of amateur basketball, and discuss how this is going to benefit the OFPs that are trying to work into the sport. So OFPs, this is for you. So listen up. So where we come in as OFPs, like first off, when talking about just the mainstream culture in basketball, this is probably the best time to where you can start using highlight culture to your advantage. And if you saw the clip that Austin Rivers did, or like the interview that Austin Rivers did talking about highlight culture in basketball, he goes into how nowadays everybody can get a highlight culture, or not highlight culture, it's a highlight reel, even if they're not like the top player in their state or in their city. They just hit up a company, be like, hey, I'm playing a game here, or this is what my season schedule looks like. You come out and put together some clips with me in them. Yeah, they're gonna do that. And Austin Rivers said that back in his day when he was coming up, you had to be like the man, like you had to be the top dude in your state to even, or a top dude in the country to even get a highlight reel. But now I feel like the threshold is starting to open a little bit more to where these media companies are now trying to find like the diamonds in the rough, which I think is great. So I feel like this is a time where you start to use that to advantage. Like either hit up one of these current sport media companies, or even try to start one of your own. If you're somebody that lives in the city or lives in the state with a big high school basketball culture, then I would just put in the work, to make sure you get the credentials to go to these high school games, find out who's the top player in your area, or top players in your area. Go to some games, put together a highlight reel, and just try to work out from there. And this is also a great way to even start to network, building your network through what you can provide for a prodigy that's coming up that may not have access to the certain resources that other players across the country may have. So that's definitely something to consider as an OFP and starting to try to get a jump in, either trying to get into sports media, because you never know. Like if you start something like this and people discover who you are, then they might try to bring you on for bigger and better opportunities just because of where like you putting in the work and where you're trying to start. It's just like that's a part of the hustle, really. Now, when it comes to, NIL deals, this is something that I feel like if you have like strong ties with the athletics department or with student athletes, say you have class with one of them, I would try to, become their own manager, be your own agent and try to find local talent at your school as far as sports is concerned, and just, try to help them out with trying to get an NIL deal because, not every athlete is going to be fortunate or even like have the exposure to, get an NIL deal right out the gate. They're going to need some help, and that help is going to come from the connections that they make. So if you're somebody that's interested in trying to become a sports agent or trying to find a way to, get your foot in the door and helping, manage athletes and trying to help them put some money in their pocket, put some money in your pocket, then get in touch with the student athletes at your school. That is one way that you start to network. You start to have a business prowess or to have a better understanding of how management and marketing works, and even just trying to help the athletes, or do the athletes a favor with something that they were trying to figure out, or at least didn't, get the resources to help them get that head start in trying to build an NIL portfolio. Because the NIL market is growing fast. It is growing fast at OFPs. There are literally people throwing money at college programs that are trying to say hey, you're a top guy on the baseball team, or you're top runner on the track team. It would be awesome if I could get him or her to promote my business, and it's great. And it's not, and I'm not just talking about the big businesses either. It's not big Fortune 500 companies that are coming at schools. It's local businesses. It could be the rib joint down the street from the school, or it could be the mom and pop shop right on the corner of where the frat house is. I mean, they're now the window has now opened to where a business of some sort can get a college athlete to promote their business. Again, it could be the rib joint down the street, it could be the mom and pop shop on the corner from where the frat house is, or it could be the local car dealership right in the community. There are plenty of opportunities going down that route, and I highly recommend that if that's something you're trying to do, and get a head start on, definitely make those connections when you can, especially with student athletes, because they prefer working with people that they're more they can identify with than the older generation sport agent that's already has some time in. So definitely consider that. Now, lastly, I feel like when we go back to trying to conceptualize the route to the pros and opportunities for people to work in the game of basketball, we really have to consider what's going to be best for the athlete, both from a marketing standpoint, from a financial standpoint, and just from an athletic standpoint. Because one of the things that I get really worried when it comes to high school athletes is that their athleticism stunts at an early age, and once they make it to the pros, they're gonna get they'll get burnt out, and they're just not gonna find enjoyment in trying to pursue the sport that they're playing in. And this is a common occurrence in basketball. There's been plenty of big names that have came through and that have washed out because they were just getting overworked at a young age. So just trying to find that balance of enjoyment and also just understanding what opportunities you can have for yourself, whether it's to play in these upstart pro leagues or to go to college, get an education, and then decide to go down the pro route, or even try to go overseas. Go to a different country to where the competition level is a little bit higher. I'm not going to say at the level of playing in college or overtime elite, but still competitive enough to where you can learn the mentalities of how international players are and still, be able to, refine your game to, transition it over to the NBA level if you decide to do that. Because, once you go overseas and sign a pro contract, you can't go to college. And, it's either it's either you stay over there or you come back and try your shot at making the NBA roster. But But yeah, I mean, there's a lot that goes into it. There's a lot that needs to be considered if you're a young talent and deciding what you want out of career and what route you're trying to choose. Because the doors are now starting to open up a lot more. And for us OFPs, it's great that we understand that it's not like a one-size-fits-all deal anymore. You know, like everybody's going to have a different story. And what's great about that is that each story can be marketed in the right way if it's done correctly. And yeah, and I feel like, you know, the game, like, it's now starting to grow a little bit. It's starting to, you know, become a lot more exposed. And it's up to me as a podcaster and somebody that's trying to, you know, get into the sports industry to be able to give you the game that you need to have an understanding of what it's like out in the sports industry. And that's what we're going to continue to do. But with that, that's going to wrap up today's segment. And as always, I like to wrap up every episode with talking about sports jobs of the week. So from my list, here are the sports jobs of the week for this week. So right now, there's a position open at the IMG Academy down in Florida for an events coordinator. And they're trying to look for someone that could help out with the track and field team, football, and a few other sports. So that job is open on LinkedIn right now. So if you're interested in trying to do that, then make sure you go apply. And there's also a position now open over at the Atlanta Hawks for a digital marketing coordinator. So anybody that's interested in trying to do some digital marketing, you could find that job with the Hawks on Teamwork Online. And lastly, Duke University. Yep. Product of Coach K and majority of the NBA. They have a position open in their athletics department for an account executive for their ticket sales team. And this is focused for ticket sales in football and basketball. And everybody knows about Duke basketball. So if you're interested in trying to get a start in working in college sports, and especially if you're trying to work at a prestigious athletic program like Duke, I definitely recommend you get on that. You can find that job on Teamwork Online. You can just go to the College Sports Jobs tab, and it should be right there. So, yeah, that's going to wrap it up here for the Off-Field Players Podcast. Definitely been a great episode. I've been looking forward to this one for a while now and trying to put it out there. But, yeah, I hope everybody stayed until the end. Hope you took a lot from it. And, yeah, definitely be on the lookout for future episodes. We're going to continue to keep going as I have about 2.5 months left here at St. John's before I graduate. And, yeah, I'm always going to let everybody know how the journey's going to go. But, yeah, thank you for listening. Stay strong, stay positive, and as always, achieve what you believe.